as Tom said, I spent a large part of my career working in two very large corporations. Hated it, but learned a lot because they teach you a lot about systems. And corporations are all about systems, a lot more about systems than they are about people. Came to Missouri, and hi, Karen. How are you? Welcome. Grab yourself a coffee or water if you'd like to. Very informal group. And so what I learned in that period of time was that systems are really critical to our success. Came to Missouri, came to Allen Foods, was a typical family business, didn't really use systems, and really became a very interesting launch pad for me to be able to apply some of the things I learned in those first 20 years. And we were very successful, grew that company from $100 million to $280 million, and a lot of it I attribute to obviously good people and inventing systems for the organization, which up until that point had not been used very highly. Kind of a typical family business. So fast forward then, when I left that business, it was ideal because now here I am out here trying to take advantage of what I learned in that earlier part of my career. So all of these systems, what do you do with them? Applied them, and lo and behold, here we are. Most of us need help in this area. I know I don't know a lot, and so I hooked up with Kathy and with Judy, who are really experts in this area. I'm kind of a generalist, but they really are going to drill down into some very specific tools for you as we go. Okay, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it about the business results machine and how we got here. So this is Elfie, and Elfie is kind of symbolic of the large nature of what it is that we're trying to manage as small business owners, right? We have a lot of things going on. We wear a lot of hats, and so it's the largeness of Elfie that I wanted to point out to you. However, Elfie is also wearing a cap. That's because Elfie's a big believer in education and realizes that one of the best ways to manage all of that stuff that we've got to manage is to continually improving our ability to do that. And I know you all know that or you wouldn't be here today. So I'm excited for that purpose. So here's the way I really do sincerely believe in this. We can kind of motivate you today. We're not going to change anything today, right? We can maybe get you pumped up, and I'm sure you all have been to workshops or seminars and you get all pumped up, and then like a day or two or a week later, nothing changes and you're right back to where you were before. We would really be heartbroken if that occurs here. We are desperately trying to break that concept, and what I'd like you to do is to look at the first two handouts. You should have a packet there in front of you. So here's how we would like you to use the first two things. The first page is designed for you to take notes on during the presentations. So if you get an aha, you're sitting there going, oh, they're talking to me here. This is exactly what I needed. Make notes on that. And sometimes it might be things you need to start doing. It might be things you need to stop doing, right? I mean, it could be, but that really is designed for you to just kind of stay focused on taking some good quality notes for yourself. If you go to the second page is where we'd like you to put your takeaways down, is what is it that you're actually going to accomplish as a result of today, right? And we're saying three things. The purpose for that is more than likely, if it's more than three, more than likely you won't be able to handle it. If you've got more than three, that's great, but we kind of recommended three is a good number, 3 takeaways. So the first page is to take notes, the second page is to actually develop a plan. At the end when we're all done talking, we're going to talk about what notes you took and what plans you have, because I think there can be a lot learned and gained by just listening to each other share about, oh, I learned that, here's what I'm going to apply. So when we get done talking, you guys are going to have a chance to talk. And I'll just facilitate a discussion around those 2 pages, okay? The whole idea behind that is we want you to leave here with some specific actionable things that you're committed to doing differently as a result of today. Otherwise, we will have not accomplished this investment and this huge investment in time on everyone's part. Okay? Any questions on that so far? So I'm a big what I call gap analysis person. What's the gap between where you'd like to be and where are you? And right, and Diane's smiling because we work together. She's probably heard me say this so many times she's sick of hearing it. But the truth is we need to know where are we, how are we doing, and where do we want to be. And if we haven't answered those two questions, we really don't know what we should be working on. And so would you guys agree that by and large you have issues here? Would you say that there is a gap between where you'd like to be and where you are? More than likely you wouldn't be here if you didn't have that gap, right? And so we're all of that same mindset. The question is just really, what can we do? How can we, in fact, give you a few new nuggets to work with? So the biggest thing that I see, now switching gears, that most of us struggle with is that our days are so busy, we are so full of pop-ups, what I call pop-ups. There are so many things that come across our radar screen that we really are focused primarily on the things that are urgent, not the things that are important. Right? That's unfortunate, but it's really true. If you think about it for a moment, the things that are urgent typically don't yield great results. You're putting out fires, something happened, it went wrong, or whatever those things are that are urgent, but it's the things that are important that really make a difference. And so a lot of what we're going to do today is to try to focus on making sure that you're working on the things that are important and not urgent. How many of you have seen the pickle jar with the big rocks? How many of you have seen that? It is one of the best illustrations of what we're talking about here today that I have ever seen, and it is so simple, I just love it. And if you just look at the things you have to do as big rocks, pebbles, sand, and water, the theory behind it, and you can just go Google pickle jar and you'll see this on the internet, is it just says, look, here's the thing. If you put the big rocks in first and then put the pebbles in second and put the sand in third and the water in fourth, you get more in the jar. If you put the water and the sand in first and you put the pebbles in next, you can't put as many big rocks in the jar. Pretty straightforward, right? So more than likely, that's one of the issues that you're facing. And so I love that illustration, and any time I get in trouble, I usually think about the big rocks and that, I'm off track. So what we're going to do is we're going to break that out into the systems here, into human systems and business systems. And as you heard earlier, our two speakers today are going to focus, and that is their primary area of focus is in business and human systems. And you'll see in just a minute why that's so important. So what's changing? Well, we are in a situation where change is occurring with lightning speed today. And when I coach people, most of the time I find out that people are trying to keep up. And what I say to them is, forget it. It isn't going to happen. You can't. It's too overwhelming. There's too much going on. You can't keep up. You've got to make good choices about how you're going to spend your time, what you're going to work on. And there might have been a time, I don't know, when that was possible. It certainly isn't possible today. Would you agree with that? Right? All of our lives are just, our personal lives, our work lives, we've got all of this stuff going on. And it takes a little discipline to go, and I always say to people, the most important thing you need to make is not what are you going to do, but what are you not going to do? Because we try to do it all, and it isn't going to work. And then we water down the quality because we try to do too much, and you guys know the story. And this happens to me too, so. So does this look anything like your life? Is this kind of, is this what happens to you? We are just bombarded. We are literally bombarded today with stuff, right? Some days are better than others, but it's just incredible. And I'll bet every one of you can identify with this slide because we've all got all of this stuff going on. So, back to my point earlier, you can't possibly manage it all. It's just crazy. So the third slide, there's a third page in your handouts there. If you could go to that for a second. Had a big list. So Kathy's going to talk in greater, I think it's 2 pages long, isn't it, Kathy? Yeah. Kathy's going to talk in greater detail about this list. My purpose is just to say this. So this is kind of like what you're trying to work on. And some of these things maybe don't apply to you and maybe some of them don't. But there's a page and a half of stuff there that one way or another kind of, and so again, you can't possibly work on all of that. So you've got to decide, which ones you're going to do. And Kathy, I think you're going to drill into that a little deeper into your presentation, right? So blind spots. So you're familiar with blind spots, right? And when you're driving, you're all familiar with from our driver's ed, what a blind spot is. But how does that concept apply to people? How does a blind spot, that terminology, what does that mean? Who wants to hazard out there? Rob? Yeah, so kind of just having a resource. Yeah, having a resource in what you're thinking of there is having a resource to be able to help you see outside yourself on things that you don't possibly see yourself, right? We can't see ourselves from the outside in. And whether it be a friend or a business colleague or like in Patty's case, you hire Patty to be your coach, or however you do that, we need that feedback because all of us have these areas of weaknesses, if you want to call them, that we are probably not familiar with. And I'm reading a lot more. I don't know that I totally understand this. Judy probably can address this better. Is the key today is to work on your strengths. Used to be when I was a younger manager, they focused a lot on your weaknesses. This is a weakness, and this is a weakness, and they're drilling into my head, And we become what we think about, so I just kept thinking about all these weaknesses, which probably wasn't healthy. But, so today, we really want to focus on building on your strengths, but we want to be cognizant of the fact that we all have blind spots. There are areas that we're not aware of that we need to at least be aware, and if you can't overcome them, then have somebody else help you with that. So Mason, thanks to you, Work the System is a book that Mason introduced into our group, Sam Carpenter. And Sam Carpenter, it was very interesting, Mason. I really enjoyed reading that book. I'm glad that you tipped us off. But so these next 3 slides are really a point that Sam Carpenter makes that I think are very appropriate for this morning. So Sam says, first of all, 90% of the business owners struggle with not setting direction. They're not organized. They spend too much time on random trivialities. They thrash around on the surface, and they make the uncomplicated complicated. Anybody here? This probably doesn't apply to this group. Probably a different group, right? None of you would ever be. Really? Yeah, I think I've got it down, Patty. Yeah, I think I've practiced it long enough that I've got it down. Yeah. So, we want to, let's be honest. I mean, this is the way it is, right? So that's, who knows? I think it kind of comes with being an entrepreneur and a small business owner, and, I'm not sure I exactly know why, but Sam Carpenter, pretty much identified that, and I love that quote. And so Sam's point is, it's a choice. We don't have to live that way. We're choosing to live that life. So today we want to choose to live a different life is the direction that we want to go. And a lot of times I think we think, well, that's just the way it is, and we got all these reasons why things are that way. Most of them are just excuses. So, you have to start, though, with the idea that I choose not to live that life and be disorganized and have my life in chaos and have my family mad at me and all of the things that come along with that. So his solution to that is 2 things. One, go 1 layer deeper on how you do that and to get beyond the obvious. And systems do that for us. Systems allow us to get beyond the obvious and go 1 layer deeper. And that's why systems are so important, is it's the beginning of getting into a deeper level of what we want to do. Any questions around those 3 slides, by the way? Does that resonate with you? I know it did with me when I saw this. I'm like, wow, this is... So I'm pleased to share that with you today. So how many of you have read the E-Myth, the book, The E-Myth? Okay, the E-Myth makes this point that in entrepreneurs, there are 3 people at odds with each other, with entrepreneurs. There are the entrepreneur in you, there's the manager in you, and the technician in you. And if you think about those 3 words, what do you imagine a technician? When you think of a technician, you think of what? Carl, what do you?
Somebody who makes widgets.
Yeah, right? They're pretty focused and, well, hi there. How are you? So we have a technician in us, and can you all kind of identify with that? You know, we have that, there's that technician back there, right? And then what do we mean by the manager in us? What would that, what do you suppose that he meant by that when we think about the manager in us? What was he referring to?
The one who's doing the planning and strategizing.
Yeah, I'm looking at this big picture, and yeah, this is how we're going to do that, right? So we've got that manager. So just think about that. So you got the manager doing all this planning, and you got the technician doing all this detail work, right? And that's kind of what's going on in our head. So then the third thing is the entrepreneur. So what's the entrepreneur look like? Who's the entrepreneur in our head?
Salesperson.
Right? Could be the salesperson out there. What else? Right? And so I'm dreaming, I'm thinking about what's possible, all these things that are possible, right? So what happens when you get these 3 personalities working in one body and mind? You think it creates a little confusion? Right? Kind of chaotic, right? I mean, it is. So this was brilliant. I mean, I just think his observation and all this was really brilliant. And see, systems allow us to work with that because it causes us to think a little deeper, organize things, come up with things in a systematic way, and it kind of keeps these 3 personalities from being at odds with each other. And I like it because if you have systems, then you have time to work on the other things that you really want to work. If you're trying to manage it all, it's just not possible. So one of the things that happens with systems is it keeps these 3 people working as much as possible in concert. So systems save you stress, time, energy, and money. Is this anything here that you'd like to have? I mean, so less stress, more time, more energy, more money. Seems to me like those are all big wins. And hopefully, as Judy and Kathy give you the tools that will help you with this, all of those things are going to make a big difference. But this is kind of the benefits, you know, kind of like what's in it for me. Well, these are the things that are in it for you, but it is going to require a change in habits, behaviors, and routines. Right? I mean, that's how it all works. And so if we're not willing to change our behaviors, habits, and routines, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting, which I think we would all admit we're not satisfied with. So, but it really does boil down, and that's when we have our, you know, this. So I'm going to just give you this one last slide, and then I'm going to introduce Judy. So can everyone see this okay? Is that okay? So this looks really complicated, but it really is simple. So I'm going to take you through how this slide is worth $10,000 to you if you use it. If you don't, it's worth nothing. So this is the way I look at my world, and I would encourage you to look at your world. So we have to balance our concern for results with concern for people. If you just focus on the people, that's great, that's nice, you feel good. But if you don't focus on results, what happens? You don't make money, and you feel good, but you don't make money. But what happens if you focus too much on results and not concern for people? Then what happens? People think you don't care, you don't have relationships, and you're on an island all by yourself. So this balance and focus on concern for results and concern for people is really in the forefront of my mind all the time. What kind of a job am I doing balancing those two things? And I have to tell you, usually when I get in trouble, and if you think about yourselves, when I get in trouble, it's usually because those things are out of balance. I'm spending too much time in one area and not enough time in the other. And it's real easy because you can get drawn into, one or the other, and then you get stuck. So that's where I start, and it works really well. So the other thing that I like, I'm big into bundling things, because I find that lists are hard for me to manage, and so I like to bundle them. So I like to bundle them into these 4 quadrants. So planning, working the plan, effective relationships, and then this is about competence. And so when I work with clients, sometimes I bring this out and sometimes I don't, but this is always what's in my head is, because what happens if you plan but don't execute? What happens? Do you get a lot done? Huh? It's bad news, right? So what happens if you execute but don't have a plan? How does that work? Huh? Is that good? It's like you're just running off in all these directions, but there's no plan behind it, right? So this left side here, this is Kathy Sexton. This is Kathy's mission, is to give you some tools on this area over here. So when these guys are presenting, I'd like you to kind of think about planning and executing the plan. That's what Kathy's going to give you some insight into, okay? On this side over, oops, excuse me. Wow, went too far. Sorry, Judy. So on this side, on the right-hand side, this is about the people and about having the competence. So why is competence important? Why is it important that you're perceived as being competent? How does that affect your relationships?
It helps with the trust then,
Right, yeah, right? I mean, if you're not competent and you're working with other people, how are they going to feel about that, right? Are they going to trust you? I mean, probably not, right? Even though you may be trustworthy, they're not thinking that you really know what you're doing. So competence plays a very big role in relationships. And so effective relationships have to do with the trust. And so, again, I'm gonna get off stage, going to give Judy the opportunity to talk now. But as Judy and Kathy talk, just remember, basically, we want you to be able to do these 4 things. You have to be able to walk and chew gum here. You can't do one at the expense of the other. You cannot be successful and achieve your potential without doing both. You have got to do all 4 of these things. And you can't compromise on any of them. That's the area. So there may be times when you're going to spend more time in one quadrant or the other. That's fine. You can't ignore one quadrant, though. You can't ignore your competence. You can't ignore the people around you. You can't ignore the planning, and you can't ignore the execution of those plans. If you do, the whole thing is shot, because you've got a good plan, but you didn't execute it. You've got a great plan, and you executed it well, and people don't like you, don't care for you, aren't going to buy from you, or whatever, And if you do those 3 things, but you really aren't working on focusing on building on your strengths, you may be successful right now, but you're not going to be successful next year, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. So you see, they all have to act in concert. And your job is to discern what needs to be worked on when, and then bounce that around. And I like this because it kind of keeps me from getting too far astray. And this is something I've learned really over 40 years. I've changed this slide 40 times. Because and those of you who coach people know how that works. It's like I keep learning and growing and getting better with it. So you're getting the benefit of 40 years worth of my screw-ups. So anyhow, I think that's it. Thank you.